is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, I must say that I do feel sorry for Todd McClay. He is the sort of the ministerial version of the guy walking behind the elephant with the shovel. After 15 plus years of Peter Dunn being Minister of Revenue, I think he holds the record for the person in that portfolio of any Minister of Revenue in the Commonwealth. Suddenly we get this piece of legislation which Mr McClay, I've got to give him credit, he's made the best fist of it, he's polished it up, he's shellacked it a few times, he's got the spin as best he can, but I've got to say, sir, there's the conspiracy theory and the cock-up theory, and we certainly have the latter today. He touched on body corporates. Well, let's have a look at the history of that. On the 6th of June, the then Minister of Revenue announced that body corporates were to be deregistered from GST from that date. Now, the result of that, of course, was that those body corporates lost the ability to claim input tax refunds on their expenses, even if that expenditure was funded from levies on which GST had already been paid. For instance, or for example, a double tax of GST on the same expenditure. Now, the Minister's announcement, of course, overrode the finding in law reached by the IRD. So that was June 2014. This bill comes before the House as a clean-up, is a reversal of that decision. It's a stuff-up, sir. A total, a reversal. It's a reversal. Now, what it means, of course, is that this was bad policy, it was bad in principle, it was bad process, it overrode the IRD, but I have to say body corporates will welcome the sort of reforming zeal of the incoming Minister of Revenue because he's prepared to reverse it. But you've got to say, where has the institutional knowledge in the IRD gone, and why has it taken, and this is just strike one, the change of a minister from a veteran to a newbie for us to find out about these sort of things? And then, of course, we come to the child support issue. Well, so Mr Dunn, the longest-serving Revenue Minister in the Commonwealth Parliament, says that he looked at this issue, and the expenditure went from $30 million to $120 million within a couple of years.
How much?
$30 million bucks to $120 million bucks. Now, we asked Mr Dunn, could you please explain? You know, it's sort of like Manuel on Fawlty Towers, explain. And silence. A 15-year veteran taking $250,000 salary every year for 15 years, and he's got another job, and he passed the steamy brown bag with the mess in it to Todd McClay. So then we asked Todd McClay, since he took over, what's happened? And it went from $120 million to $210 million. Now that's got to be some sort of Guinness Book of Records job, that one. And then the Cabinet decided to paper over the cracks and revise it down to $163 million. By not implementing it. By not, I was coming that bit. By not implementing it. So we've got clauses in this bill tonight to roll back government policy that they trumpeted before the last election on child support because the budget blew out. Now, I know how tough it is, like Mr McClay, I got sympathy. I was a minister, there's late nights, you've got to read past the executive summary, you've got to actually ask some questions, you've got to know what questions to ask, and sometimes it pays to, on the weekly staff meeting with your officials, when you're dealing with IT projects and the like, to say, are we on budget? Has it clicked up a notch? Why have we gone up a couple of $1 million bucks? Mr Dunn probably waited till, maybe it was like, who wants to be a millionaire? I'll wait till I hit 120 mil, because we've already got 30 mil in the locker, and then I might wake up and ask the odd question. Right. Then Todd McClay comes in and says, no, I can do better than that. I'll wait till it gets to 210. And then I'll go running into the Cabinet room and say, boys and girls, we've got a problem. We've got to do something. And then they send the poor chap down here to try and shellac over the problems. So I've got to say, this on top, of course, what we now know is a massive blowout, and I look forward to the Select Committee, Mr Speaker, tomorrow, that'll be a cracker, in the business transformation program. What an oxymoron that is. 83 million bucks, so you've got 163 million, 4 times Nova Pay and counting, and then at least $83 million that we know of spent for no gain whatsoever in a quote-unquote business transformation project. Well, it's transforming, all right. It's transforming a lot of money out of the pockets of taxpayers down the toilet, and at $250 stipend per day, accommodation, fees and trans-Tasman flights, I think it is, to Accenture, to these multiple consultants that fly over every day, who write papers and do all sorts of things. It's transforming the IRD. It's transforming them into the best example that we've had since INSIS. So we've had an overpay. We haven't learned anything from that, the government has, and we now have a budget blowout that we're trying to peel back tonight of $163 million. What have they learnt from Novapay? Zero. So I've got to say that I have some sympathy with Todd McClay tonight, because he's been sent down, he's given the hospital pass, maybe he did, although he's got associate trade, so fair go, that must be the sort of, gift that keeps on giving. That'll get him out of IRD when Tim Grosser heads off to a diplomatic post at some point. So maybe that's the compensation prize for taking the bullet and taking the hit tonight. But this is serious. This is serious. Why is it? Who is accountable? Who is accountable, Minister, for the $163 million blowout? Because we asked some questions last week, not one minister, not yourself, sir, or your 15-year veteran predecessor, would ante up and tell the taxpayer how this blowout occurred. There was some waffly explanation about depreciation and capital charge. Well, all that proves, Minister, is your department spent a chunk of dough, a big chunk of capital. But no explanation at all, no accountability. Maybe tomorrow at FEC we'll get some sort of explanation out of the Minister's departmental head, the Commissioner of IRD. But one would have expected a minister, although again I've got sympathy for Mr McClay, I think Mr Dunn's, around here somewhere in the ether, very happy to wax eloquently on all sorts of other issues, except a 15-year legacy of hundreds of millions of dollars of blowout under his watch. But at least he had the ability to admit that he sat there and watched it go from 30 to 120 and did nothing. Did absolutely nothing. The other measure that's been waxed eloquently about in here is the R&D so-called cash out. Here's the difficulty, Minister, and I'll be very interested to see what your officials have to say on this. Given this is a highly complex instrument that is based on shareholding, based on labour to R&D ratios, and a whole series of complex formula, not even consistent with the general definition of R&D, has he taken into account the need for small to medium-sized enterprises? If they want to participate in this, they will need a bucket load of professional, expensive accounting advice. And I can remember the words of Bill English when we were in government and we introduced proper R&D tax credits. Bill English said, quote, "This will be a joy for the accountants. This will be a joy for the accountants and the tax lawyers. They'll make all the dough." Well, I wager that no SME, Minister, no SME will be able to deal with this and take advantage or even full advantage of this unless they have the resources to go and seek expensive tax advice. This is not simple. SMEs require simple, transparent legislation that is workable. It may be well intended, but I would put to this Minister, it is unworkable. So what we have, sir, in conclusion tonight, is a botched series of policies, embarrassing reversals, paper overs, some shellacking by the Minister, rolling back of the parental, many of the parental clauses simply to save money, tinkering around the edges, but the taxpayer has one little bit of certainty. They know that this Minister took the bill from 163 to 210 down to 160, from 120 to 210 and then revised it back to 163 million, and his predecessor took it from 30 to 120. No questions asked, because he would have told us, no holding the department to accountability, no saying, I want to know if we're going off the rails or the $1 million mark is clicking up. No, I'm going to monitor this closely. Not a thing, asleep at the wheel, Solid Energy, I suspect, Mark II, and they send the junior minister down here to try and paper it over at sort of 9:30 at night, hoping everybody's asleep. Well, I say, Minister, we'll support this to the Select Committee because that is the tradition with these tax bills. But this will come under close scrutiny, and I suspect we'll have a large number of submissions from SMEs. from the tax fraternity and others, and we await with bated breath some sort of explanation from the minister in the chair, or maybe where he's around here somewhere, of his veteran 15-year predecessor that went cha-ching every day and let the cash flow out of the taxpayer's pocket down the proverbial.